Welcome to the Poetry Show podcast, a production of Enlighten Radio at www.enlightenradio.org. Today's show features Ruth MacQuade, a longtime federal prosecutor, retired, and writing short stories and poetry now, and a friend of this program from about 15 years ago. Here we go as Ruth introduces herself. Thank you, and our show broadcasts Wednesdays at 10 a.m. live on www.enlightenradio.org.
Prosecutor, and I worked in D.C. and then even in Martinsburg, and I retired. It's hard to tell when you have the pandemic, but about 4 years ago, and since then I've been writing poetry and short stories. So it's been a shift from being a lawyer to writing, being more creative in writing poetry and short stories. So, but that's sort of what I've been up to. And as you also said, I'm the 10th of 15 children. I grew up in Richwood, West Virginia, which is near Summersville, and most people know where the Greenbrier is, so it's in that area.
Right.
And that pretty much covers it.
What inspired you to do writing and either short stories or poetry when you retired? My dad was a lawyer, and he never thought about doing that. He just thought about the golf course. So, anyway, what was the inspiration?
Well, part of it, I had written poetry before while I was an attorney, but it was scattered and not very often. But when I had the time and retired, I took a writing course, and I've also attended a writer's retreat in Cape on Springs 3 times now, and that was and has been very inspiring to me to both write short stories and poetry.
Have you mainly been focused on writing about your family experience? Has that been the muse for you?
Yeah, I think so, because it's been a prominent part of my life, and I'm trying to move beyond that and begin writing poems more broadly. But initially it's been a primary focus of mine.
They say that what is most personal is what is most universal. So I'm sure that your family story resonates with many people.
I hope so. In some respects, I would hope not. But when I read my poetry, you'll see what I mean.
Okay, hold on a second.
Did you read a lot of poetry while you were a lawyer?
I did not. I simply didn't have time.
Okay. I thought that might be the case.
Yeah. I was reading legal briefs.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got them all here. Just about one more to go. Janet.
I guess I should have copied them at the same
time.
Oh,
well, I should have done it this morning. I just this is typical of me here. Okay. All right. I think she's got them now. Well, let me ask you a question. Which the poems are very interesting because they're all, each of them are pretty narrative type poems. An example. Which one do you want to start with?
I'll start with Inchworm, and actually it was one that came directly out of the writers' retreat at Cape on Springs. I was there this past, I believe it was June or July, and I was taking a break from some of the seminars, and I was sitting out on a porch, and I was listening to this beautiful stream, and it's what happened there that prompted me to write this poem. And it's called Inchworm. Sitting on a porch next to a small creek, a slender, translucent yellow inchworm inches his way down your arm, slowly measuring each inch with successive loops. Unclear where the inchworm is bound, maybe to a leaf to nibble, or to the ground to burrow, form a cocoon, transform to a moth? Or is his aim more sinister? And as the legend goes, if an inchworm crawls on you, he is measuring you for your coffin. Has he found you, sensing you are ripe for measurement, as you are readying yourself for your coffin, and you inch yourself towards death?
Yeah. Every day is gravy. That's what I say these days. So it seems like it was a pastoral scene that turned a bit grim.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Actually, at the time that I wrote the poem initially, I didn't know about the legend. And as I studied what an inchworm was, and I mean, I growing up in West Virginia, I mean, I'd seen many inchworms,
Right.
but I was unfamiliar with the legend. Apparently, it comes out of Kentucky, and so that was the inspiration. Is when I learned of the legend that as it crawls up you, it's measuring
Coffin, yeah.
measuring you for your coffin.
I think that actually Willie Nelson refers to that in one of his songs. He has a song in which there's an inchworm verse, I know. I'll have to go back and see whether he was referring to the same legend. Might have been, So, but he was from Texas. That's probably a long way from Kentucky.
Another friend of mine mentioned that there was a song about an inchworm, but I was unfamiliar with it, and I didn't know it was Willie Nelson.
Well, he has one, and I'll try to look up the. I'm just thinking about it now as you were telling me about it. That I'll have to look it up. It's on one of his early albums, but he reprised it, I think, on the recent one that he did, which is he did at 90 years old. Can you imagine? I think it's a song called "Old Timer."
Old Timer? Okay.
The
Anyway.
legend that you weave into this gives the poem a whole different dimension. It moves it to a whole different place. So I thought that was really very skillfully done.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, let's do another one. By the way, folks, a little station ID here. You're listening to www.enlightenradio.org. And also, if you're on a small device, you probably should try to use player.enlightenradio.org. Otherwise, you'll have a hard time finding the player. And, we're the poetry show broadcasts regularly on Wednesdays mostly at 10, unless we have an appointment of some sort, which in our status we sometimes do. And we usually podcast it onto our site called podcasts.enlightenradio.org. And today's guest is Ruth MacQuade, someone that appeared on our show many years ago now, and has been resurrected for us. And so I'm just thrilled to have her here. And what is the next poem you'd like to do for us?
Well, as I mentioned earlier about being from a large family, this poem is directly about that. I'll explain how it came to be. I was at a doctor's office, actually, and being examined, and in the course of examination, he learned that I had a number of siblings, and he said, "Oh, your mother must have been a grand multipora. And I didn't know at the time he said that what the term meant, but I eventually looked it up, and it simply means a mother that has more than one child. And if you have more than 5 children, you're a grand multipora. And if you have more than 10, you're a great grand multipora. Well, at the time, I didn't know about the great, so I titled this poem about my mother, The Grand Multipora. You, the grand multipora, who had so many children, she didn't know what to do. So you hid from us in the attic. You locked us out. You called it your secret place, but we knew the secret. We saw her, the gray headless dress form that you draped the clothes on. We watched as you carefully pinned the fabric around her small waist. We watched as you moved slowly around her with your sewing chair. We watched as you admired her. We watched as you selected the perfect fabric for her from unused bolts of fabric of every color, size, and texture. Even if you went there to make our clothes, it was only so that you could spend more time with her. Yes, you made our corduroy cheerleading outfits. And yes, you made our Easter outfits with matching pinafores. But you referred to us as numbers. She is my number 10, or she is my number 15. Did you forget our names? What about her, your headless gray dress form? Did she have a name? Did you remember her name?
Whoa. That's powerful. Hey, Janet, what do you think about that one? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm off mute. I think now. Am I off mute now? That moment where she talks about referring to the children by number it just squeezes your heart, because your name is so personal to you. And for your mother not to call you by your name is such I won't say it's an insult, but it's such a telling moment. That she numbers her children rather than names them.
Right. Right. And I think that happens in a family. Well, I don't know that it happens in every family, but I think it certainly might happen in a family of 15 children, where you become a number instead of a person with a name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
imagine you had to raise yourself partially with, the help of your siblings, with your mother so abstracted.
Right. I had 3 older sisters that helped me.
So let me ask, so that's an interesting, how much older was the oldest than you?
About 15 years.
Oh,
well,
so
there were 15 children in 20 years.
Wow.
Right. Okay, so and then the older children must have been, recruited to be supervisors of the younger ones, right?
Babysitters.
Yeah, right. I mean, there would be no other way to do it, really.
The only way to manage it, really. But there were times where we had a babysitter.
And you yourself, I mean, so you were 10 out of 15, so you must have had the same experience helping to raise your younger siblings. Is that correct?
Well, actually, I didn't because I was so close in age to them.
As
the 10th.
Were you guys sort of like a group, like a gang inside the family?
The little one.
Wow.
Wow. So no, I didn't have any of those duties.
That was but anyway, I thought you put it very nicely.
Thank you, John.
I'll remember that one. Well, let's try another one. This is very interesting.
Well, I'm going to go from my mother to my father. To a poem about, really, it's a poem. As I said, I grew up in Richwood, West Virginia, which was at the time still is a very small town near Summersville, West Virginia, near Lewisburg. And it was coal mining country. There were some lumber yards, and the railroad, but mostly it was coal. And this is a poem that I believe reflects what it was like to grow up in coal country. It's called Chosen. On Sundays, my father would go to the mines. He chose only one of us to go with him. It didn't matter that there was rarely any conversation. All that mattered was that you were chosen. It didn't matter that the trips to the mines were long, or that you got sick going up and around the hairpin curves, or that all you saw along the way were dilapidated houses, porches propped up on cinder blocks, plastic-covered windows, and dirty children out front. It didn't matter that you got sick from the smell of coal dust in the car, or that the coal dust in the car made it difficult for you to breathe. It didn't matter that when you returned from the mines that you had to remove his boots, which were caked with tiny pieces of coal and layered with coal dust, or that when you tried to untie his shoelaces, that you could feel the coal grit in your nostrils, your mouth, and on your teeth. And it didn't matter that it felt like sandpaper. It didn't matter because afterwards he pulled you up to sit in his lap.
Wow.
That is an amazingly powerful poem.
Thank you.
The repetition of it didn't matter, and then the ending where he takes the child into his lap. At first it seems so impersonal, it just takes you along, he doesn't even talk to you. But at the end, there's that very tender moment.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Jim.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I think it's again reflection of growing up. I mean, apart from the mining, growing up in a large family that you're always kind of competing for attention.
And with 15 children, it doesn't come around probably more than once a week. So you'd be lucky to get that. Wow. On the coal, any of your family still involved in coal?
Not presently. I had two brothers that went into the mining industry. One actually worked for Enron, and the other one ran some mines in Pikeville, Kentucky. But they're older than me, and so they're long since retired.
Right.
But my father would never have thought that a woman could be in the coal industry. He was opposed to women in the coal mines, which when I was in law school, we were fighting to get women in the coal mines because of the salaries. They were better. They were
That's
larger.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and not only that, I just recently, my wife's an economist, and she gave me all this data on West Virginia, on its gross, domestic product, and all the various things that the national accounts now track by state, all the national statistics. Anyway, it was very interesting to me that by an overwhelming measure, the wealth of the state and also the portion of its production is energy, coal, natural gas. and it dwarfs everything. Everything else you're doing in the state, you may be paying somebody wages or something, but the value it's producing is next to nothing compared to coal. Nothing.
Wow.
Talk about 7 times any other input to the gross national. 7 times. So, it's still here.
Yeah.
And along with, I don't know, the coal miners, if they were unionized, did okay with money. I mean, the union has fought hard for them. On the other hand, I mean, there's a lot of other accessory situations that take place in terms of poverty or no other kind of development in these areas that can coexist easily with mining, right? And you end up with this curse of natural resources that makes you either have to choose between living in, I don't know, Saudi Arabia or Norway, 2 extremes. So it's a great testimony, Ruth. I like it. Do you have one? Go ahead,
on the physical
Janet.
details of the poem. The idea of the coal dust, getting in your nostrils, your mouth, your teeth, and it felt like sandpaper. You made this so vivid. Your description of the trip, getting sick on the switchbacks, the old dilapidated houses. It's just rich with detail that makes the poem very vivid and hits the reader very hard.
Thank you, Janet.
And we're at the. Yeah. Okay. So let's. Do you have another that you want to?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why I'm ending on this one. I had 4 poems to read this morning, and I didn't intend to end on this one, but as I picked them up, well, anyway, we are ending on it. A little bit of background about this poem is that I was taking a short story class at Lifelong Learning at Shepherd, and the instructor asked us to write a short story about some aspect of our family. And so I wrote a story about how the entire family, 17 of us, including my parents, went to the Greenbrier to get a family portrait done. And after I read the story, I came home and I thought, well, it wasn't the whole truth. So I decided to rewrite it as a poem that captured the full picture. And it's called The Making of a Family Portrait. It was to be a festive affair, making a family portrait at the Greenbrier Resort, painted by the famous portraiture artist W.H. Anderson, who before us painted the portraits of Jimmy Carter and Richard Nixon. Preparations for the portrait were hectic. The girls needed permanents and matching dresses. The boys starched white shirts. Mother, a new dress. Daddy, a new suit. Designed by my father, it was to be a symmetrical portrait. The older children to be shown in 4 sets of 3. The youngest girl in the center, between my mother and father, and the 2 youngest boys at the bottom, facing each other. Finished, the large 5-foot square family portrait hung on the wall of my parents' living room. Proudly shown to anyone who wanted to see the number of happy and healthy children my father sired and my mother reared. But hidden behind the smiles are the fearful face of my mother in the presence of my father, the wincing faces of children caused by the belt lashing of their father, and the sad faces of 2 brothers who died by suicide. I hate to end on that poem. I should have read it earlier.
Yeah. That's, wow. I like to almost have to hold that poem in the light. Janet, what's your reaction?
I am having a family that also was riddled by depression and mental illness and suicide. The last line just really, I wasn't expecting it, and it really hit hard. Um, it is a very powerful moment. It shows that, and the poem is, I think the poem is about surfaces, the outer surface and the inner reality and the inner truth, and I think it does get to both. It does
Well,
justice to both.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I think it looks behind the portrait.
Yes.
Are there any other writers amongst your siblings?
Well, actually, there were. I have two older sisters who are since deceased, but both of them were writers. In fact, one of them wrote a book about the family, and they would be very excited and pleased that I'm writing. And
Good.
but they're no longer around. But I looked at their pictures this morning before I came on this show.
Oh, right. Well, that's wonderful. I think that's a good poem to end on. I think the listeners will ponder it for a while. It's a kind of testimony that needs no sermon to
Right.
follow it. So I thank you very much for sharing that.
How many of the 15 children got to college, Ruth?
All of them.
All of them. Wow. That's amazing.
Right. My father was really very much interested in education, and he made certain of that. So,
That's a remarkable story.
Was he a UMWA member?
no, he was not, John. He became after he started off at, I guess, right after he graduated from high school. He went into the mines with his father, who was born in Scotland and was also a miner. But I don't know the time periods, but he became a foreman in the coal mines. Then he became a superintendent in the coal mines.
Right.
So he was not on the union side or the other side.
Right. Well, every time I go to Charleston with the state, that's now the retirees, Alliance for Retired Americans, almost every other year, Cecil Roberts comes and, does his thing. He's a very powerful speaker. But his main power is he tells stories, right?
Right.
About actual miners, and he's just spectacular at it. I think I should call him and have him read your poems and see whether he could convert some of his speeches to poetry, because because they have a little bit the same spirit. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I haven't ever heard him speak, but I bet you it is interesting.
Oh yeah, he's a real barn burner. I mean, yeah, and completely committed, completely. Just but anyway, I just felt it was just wonderful to have you join us, and I just want to thank you so much, for helping make this a. I wish we could get some more regional or state West Virginia type poets on, and develop a groundswell of stuff like that. I went to the lifelong learning Capon thing 1 year.
Oh,
And
you did?
yeah, and I got started. I was going to write a mystery story about a mill town in Vermont that I worked in for quite a while. But like when the minute I got into doing my usual routines and everything like that, I lost discipline, Ruth.
Well, it takes discipline to write. It certainly does.
Janet is the poet. She's really she's serious at it. So anyway, anything else, Janet? Go
Pardon?
ahead. Do we have anything else you want to?
Were you about to ask a question, Ruth?
Yeah, I just wanted to. Well, one, there are a number of poets in this area, and who would love to have the opportunity to come on this show and read their poems. But I also, you talked about or what influenced me to writing, continuing to write poetry. I'm part of a group that meets on Wednesday evenings, and Ray Sibley is the instructor or the workshop leader. And then there are several of us who attend. And I've been inspired tremendously by him and the other poets in my group. And I just want to mention that because of how important it is to my writing.
Where do you guys meet? Do you meet outside?
We meet at Four Seasons on the second
Oh,
floor.
okay. Oh, right. Okay, right. All right. Well, I think that's it for today, Janet. I think
Okay.
we got a wonderful show. Anyway, thank you very much again, Ruth, and we'll be in touch. All right.
And thank you for the opportunity.
It was great to
And keep writing.
Thank
keep
you,
writing,
Jim.
and
Yeah.
it was great to see you again. All right, everybody,
Okay.
take care of each other. It's late, but everything comes next.